Jake. On this week's episode of Leah's show, Jackson, gold-based security chief, stated that after he was forced to sell his wife on having an abortion during a meter check, he had a dirty needle. They briefly state that is something that indicates hidden transgressions. Could you explain this further to this WOG? What would an auditor be looking for to come to the conclusion someone's needle was dirty? Yeah, this is easy enough. A dirty needle is a phenomena that occurs on an e-meter where the needle will sit there and do this kind of a ticking, sort of erratic ticking motion, or it's not clean. A clean needle is a smooth, uninterrupted needle movement where the needle's just sort of idling around. It's not really responding or reacting in any way. My finger is sort of the needle on the dial here. It's not, floating where it goes back and forth, rhythmically back and forth. That's a floating needle. A clean needle is just usually a slow rise or a slow fall, and there's not really any ticking in it. Dirty needle is when the needle starts ticking around. It looks a little erratic, a little agitated, a little jerky, right? It's got little jerks in it. And those little nicks and tick-ticks and whatnot are supposed to indicate one of three things. Either the auditor's TRs are bad, in other words, he's interrupting the person, or he's speaking out of turn, or he is not paying attention to the pre-clear, the person who's holding the cans. And the pre-clear is noticing this and is getting a little irked or irritated with the auditor, and the needle gets dirty. So that could be one cause, is the auditor's TRs are bad. The other cause could be that the auditor is breaking the auditor's code. He's invalidating what the pre-clear is saying, or he's telling the pre-clear what to think about his case, or he's in some other way being a distracting oaf in the session. And that also would cause a dirty needle phenomena. But the third and the most used and the go-to reason from auditors is that the PC, the pre-clear, has withholds he doesn't want known. And the dirty needle is this, there's something there, there's some hidden withholds or transgressions that the guy is not talking about, but he's thinking about it, he had some thoughts about it. And because he had those thoughts about it, that needle is dirty. And the only way to clean the needle is to get the guy to tell you what's on his mind. Right? What are you thinking about, right? And so if a needle goes dirty, the auditor's response will not be, oh, I'm sorry, I broke the auditor's code, or, oh, gee, I'm sorry, my TRs were bad. The auditor will never do that. Instead, because another point of the auditor's code in Scientology auditing is that the auditor will never apologize for any mistake that he makes in an auditing session, whether real or imagined, right? Because the auditor has to maintain auditor authority and presence. And if he sits there and apologizes to the pre-clear for something that the pre-clear says he did, then that gives control of the session to the pre-clear, and the auditor's lost control of the session. So this is a rule in auditing. I'm not saying that any of this is a good rule, or that this is how good auditing or good counseling should be done. In fact, these are elements of bad counseling, but it's the rules of auditing. So the go-to response, if a needle is dirty, is for the auditor to look up at the pre-clear and say, what's happening? What's on your mind? What are you thinking about? What's that? Maybe in the middle of all this erratic motion, there's a little particular tick, let's say. The needle double ticks, right? And then it kind of moves over here, and then it ticks again, and then it kind of goes over, it ticks again. And the auditor would go, yeah, what's that thought you're having there? What are you looking at? What are you thinking about? Oh, nothing. I was thinking about the birds outside. Well, if the needle's still dirty, then there's something more, right? Okay, what else are you thinking about? And the auditor will try to then maybe ask questions that will solicit a read or an actual response on the meter that he can follow up on to get whatever the overts, the transgressions, the harmful acts that the pre-clear is not telling him about. So the auditor might look at the dirty needle and go, okay, well, is there some withhold here? Is there something you're not telling me? Have you done something you're ashamed of? Have you done something that you're not telling me? Is there something you thought of you think would make me think less of you? Right? There's all kinds of questions he could just fire out to solicit, hey, what's the needle? What's this needle dirty for? Right? What overt have you committed? And he can vary that question 10, 20, 30 different ways to get the needle to read, to fall, to have a response that he can then chase down with the guy. So that's kind of the procedurally, that's what happens. But it almost always indicates that the pre-clear is not telling all, right? And the proof of this is that when you get the pre-clear to give up some overt or tell you whatever it is that's on his mind, the needle stops doing that and smooths out, right? And it'll kind of chill out. So, you know, I don't know. I'll talk much more in detail about this when I get that meter video done, but I think that's enough to give you the idea of what's going on in the session and what the pre-clear and the auditor are expecting to have happen when a dirty needle turns on.